I just wanted to say, there are quite a number of people who can't participate in these gatherings, and they end up watching the videos. So we, through our dialogue, create a resource for others, and it may. And the topic is vulnerability, and I said this before at the beginning of this, that I feel kind of like I'm recovering from a bout of vulnerability because I was without my PC for 3 days and was behind in terms of slides and who's going to present slides. And of course, we've got to have some slides, but who's going to do the meditation? What can I quote? And so it's all this. Oh, we got to have our game together, and I think it's somewhat together, but that's just in the spirit of openness. That's where I'm at. So I want to. We just have a title slide. We tend to always have these. And this is kind of the flow we've got for this morning. And we're kind of going to combine the opening meditation with turtles without shells, and you'll see what that is. And then I threw together one slide that, for me anyway, helped clarify this idea of defensiveness, vulnerability, invulnerability. Go through that quickly. We'll revisit the role of facilitator, because it seems to change as we focused on vulnerability. There are a handful of quotes we're going to go through quickly, and then a few paragraphs we're going to take time reading through. And then I really want to spend a good amount of time in dialogue within this group about, what is the experience we've had as someone who shares vulnerability, as somebody who observes vulnerability, or somebody who facilitates in a gathering where there's vulnerability. What is that like? Some suggestions on what to do and what not to do to enable deep vulnerability. And then we'll conclude with, so where do we go next? And a closing meditation. So, Joan, do you want me to show the turtle slide, or?
Yes, let's go ahead and do that. Let's start off.
Okay, so this will be a visual for the meditation.
Yes. And so, turtles without shells. We stand naked in the rain, sharing who we are. And this has, this to me expresses the dynamic between vulnerability and invulnerability. In order to know who we are, we must share who we are. And so I want to start off, though, with a meditation on in our invulnerable state, who we are in truth. And these are two passages from ACIM that really speak to our true self, our invulnerable state. The first one is from lesson 41. God goes with me wherever I go. So if you will just relax and drop into your heart and feel these words. God goes with me wherever I go. Deep within you is everything that is perfect, ready to radiate through you and out into the world. You can never be deprived of your perfect holiness because its source goes with you wherever you go. You can never suffer because the source of all joy goes with you wherever you go. You can never be alone because the source of all life goes with you wherever you go. Nothing can destroy your peace of mind because God goes with you wherever you go. And from lesson 156, I walk with God in perfect holiness. There is a light in you which cannot die, whose presence is so holy that the world is sanctified because of you. All things that live bring gifts to you and offer them in gratitude and gladness at your feet. The scent of flowers is their gift to you. The waves bow down before you, and the trees extend their arms to shield you from the heat and lay their leaves before you on the ground that you may walk in softness, while the wind sinks to a whisper around your holy head. So again, I think that just beautifully expresses our true state of who we are and our connection to one another, to all life, and our source. So is there a response?
I don't know about a response, but maybe just clarification. I think what we're saying here is that what ACOL refers to as our higher capital S self is totally invulnerable, indelible, can never be harmed or hurt. So when we're speaking of vulnerability, in a way, I think what we're talking about is letting go of the illusion that we're vulnerable. And while we're still under the fear of being vulnerable, it's still climbing a mountain of fear, even though ultimately our true self is invulnerable, whether we are aware of that or not. Anyway, that's my understanding of the process we're going through here now. Maybe you could help me with that.
Oh, I think so. That was a beautiful expression of the process. Yes, that is a part of our daily life. I know with the just in the haiku that the turtles without shells, I put on the cover of, and it didn't have an illustration, but just on the cover of a group of poems that I had written. And because it did express that fear of sharing, of being seen, of being who you are. And my granddaughter actually did the illustration. And she also, she said, will I get credit for this? But she felt worthy. And she wanted the credit. So there it is. I just shared it.
There you go.
Well, tell her we all thought it was absolutely lovely, and thanks for that.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, the turtles don't look afraid.
No, they're bold, aren't they? I mean, they threw off those shells. And that's what we're going to do today, is just throw off our shells and allow our true self to be revealed.
So
we don't have to stand in the rain, though. Okay.
I think Mark was a perfect straight man for the next slide, because this is something that came up in discussion with Lemoyne and discussion with others and with Joan. This idea of, okay, it talks about it. We have a defenselessness about us. We don't need to be defensive. We are, we're being called to be vulnerable in the courses, and we're also reminded that we are invulnerable. So what occurred to me is that we have these shells, kind of like the turtle shells, and the outer shell is our defenses that the ego wants to put up. And I still have the word overcome on it. Lemoyne, I think, had a better word than overcoming. But we have these ego-based defenses, and closely tied to that is this idea of being vulnerable. So we need to remove the ego-based defenses by being vulnerable. And ultimately, I think the motivation comes from the realization, as you said, Mark, that we are invulnerable. So if I remember that I'm invulnerable, it's pretty easy to knock these shells loose. And there's a connection here between our invulnerability and the perfect self within. And then you notice there's a background on this slide where it's the same color as the inner. So as within, so without. My inner self is actually everywhere present. So that helped me anyway, kind of understand defenselessness, defensiveness, vulnerability, invulnerability in this. To me, it seems like these layers we're going through. And as facilitators, we're helping people break through those shells as well. I'll stop.
I just wanted to share, I flipped the last two were bracketed in your slide, Joe. I flipped the last two in my experience. I connect with self and then realize my invulnerability.
Mm.
That's usually the process I go through.
Yeah.
Once I'm connected and my awareness is on the truth, then my realization comes.
Yeah, good point.
Well, let me make myself vulnerable about my vulnerability or the process I go through. Of course, intellectually, we can say we know it's true that we're invulnerable. It's not just from what we read. It makes sense. God isn't out to get us. If that were true, then what would be the point of acknowledging God? So we know intellectually we are invulnerable. But for me, that's not the issue. When something scary comes up, or I want to hide, don't want other people to see, that's a denial and then a lack of awareness, lack of consciousness. So I fall asleep temporarily about the fact that I'm invulnerable, and emotionally I sort of forget that until either I am lucky enough to snap myself out of it, or if the pain level gets too high, until I go, wait a minute. So the fear of something that isn't there or isn't true, I think, can knock us unconscious to where we no longer can rely on that knowing that we're invulnerable. I'm complete.
Any other comment?
Mark, what was the word, knowing that we're what?
Knowing that we are invulnerable. We're not vulnerable, but
Right.
when a fear situation or embarrassment or whatever comes up, our emotional self reacts or responds usually in lightning speed. It takes maybe our mentation a while to catch up, but if we're emotionally fearful or afraid or embarrassed or whatever, the first response might be to get ourselves in a state of fear, and within that state we forget that we're invulnerable. So until we unwind that, until we go, wait a minute, why I'm invulnerable, why am I worried about this? But sometimes for me, I know there's a gap between when I experience the fear and when I can go, but wait a minute, I'm invulnerable. And then poof, it goes away. But it doesn't always happen instantaneously. Complete.
Mark?
Thank you.
Wait.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. The difficulty I have is going, and this applies to being vulnerable. the difficulty I have always had is going from believing to knowing. Because there are some things that in these teachings that are not just that are not immediately clear to me, but I believe there's truth in these teachings. So I have faith in these teachings, trust in the teachings, but I haven't gotten to the point of knowing. You know, and two good examples of that is, you know, I mean, one that everyone will get immediately is, you know, I believe the Earth is flat, but I know it's round. Okay, there's a belief. The other one is, I personally know for a fact, and it would take forever to explain how I got to this point, know that love is the root of all things. It is the root essence. But there are plenty of things that are brought up in these teachings, you know, Course of Miracles, Course of Love, where I believe it, but I'm not in a position of knowing, and that's where the fear comes in. That trust, the faith, you know, believing that it's truth. So complete.
What occurs to me in this discussion is that maybe what helps in the transition from belief to knowing is experiencing this with somebody else, being with somebody as they're being vulnerable, being with somebody as they realize that it's okay to be vulnerable and to, you know, to experience their invulnerability. So, you know, again, you know, through dialogue and through going hand in hand with my brother, I think is part of the transition from belief to knowing. I'm complete.
Yeah, and a really good example of dialogue, Joe, because go from believing to knowing. You know, a child trying to learn how to ride a bicycle says, "I'll never learn this. I'll never get it." You know, not believing. You know, and then and then Dad shows him, says, "Look, I can do it. You can learn it." Okay, now that's the dialogue. You know, where you actually see it incarnated. You know, the real action of hey, look, someone can do it, so therefore I can learn how to do it. That dialogue of seeing, because practice writing, practice loving, practice being vulnerable, and then that's what I see is the answer to going from believing to knowing is by practicing and seeing the results. Complete.
Any other comments, responses?
Can I go back to what?
I think Cole had his hand up. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. So I think there's few things that I see. First of all is that the vulnerability comes in because we actually don't know what is coming. You know, this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about true feelings. Like the fear is, what is it going to be like, and is it going to be okay, which makes us vulnerable. Now, when you look at the lesson 26 in Course in Miracles, my attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability, for example. But then it gives us an exercise to have a deeper look. What is this invulnerability? What is this fear? Because it's the fear of going into the unknown, which is really like going to the new. Because that's also kind of fearful. It's like, what is this new going to show me? Like the Course of Love says, entering into the new, which is pretty much unknown and incredibly spectacular in a way, because suddenly something reveals itself that wasn't there before. They're actually very similar in a texture, because once we look at what it truly is, and the truth to me comes from way below. The inspiration comes from above, but the truth comes from below. And to feel safe enough to allow this to be received. I find that lesson 26 is very powerful in that sense, because it asks us to look at what are the fears of this vulnerability really. and also showing us that those beliefs we have are our attack thoughts. And I found that many times when I did that lesson, I would have things come up that have nothing to do with the situation. So it's like learning to go into a place where we don't know what's going to come, and feel safe enough there. I think safety is a real key, because how do you develop sense of environment in which you can be vulnerable, in which you can show what's really there? It's like, going into, well, how are we really feeling? How am I feeling talking to you right now,
Yeah.
And allowing those true feelings to gently rise up, like when you open a mineral water and it's not too shaken, it just come up gently, and allowing those subtle feelings. I think it's a realm of very subtle feelings that this vulnerability is, because it's so soft, it's so feminine in its texture. Anyway, I don't know if that made any sense, but there it is.
I think absolutely. I mean, critical is for us as facilitators to provide a safe space where people feel okay about being vulnerable.
Number one. Yes, and then how do you develop that safe space would have to be through asking people, what do they need to feel safe?
Yeah.
And next minute you will have a stories going on of what's required. But once you know what they need, you can provide it. But while we are sitting here pretending we are doing fine and we're just reading the course, we're not developing the sense of safety, because we don't know what it is, because it's so individual for each of us.
Yeah.
So
And
for
one
me,
way we can,
Mhm.
sorry.
Go ahead.
One
No,
way
go
we
ahead.
can do that is to be vulnerable ourselves, is to demonstrate or be willing to show that we are vulnerable, and show them what that looks like to you, and ask them what they think being vulnerable means.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Steve and then Lori.
I think Susan just basically touched on what I wanted to say, that what we are is what is represented. And if I'm open and loving, people will feel safe in that environment, and they will be open also. And so a resonance, develops where everybody kind of comes into the same harmony, the same tune, from a higher place. And so, I think it starts with, let's say, starts with me, and I extend that. And when it's seen as safe, people will feel then safe. And my safety lies in my defenselessness. If I tear down my walls, the others will tear theirs down also.
Yeah.
Complete.
Lori?
I think, Steve, and everyone, I had, since Saturday, I've had 3 experiences of just, well, I put alarms in my cell phone when it's time for me to, per se, pivot, go from a job to the next thing. I put an alarm in my phone after each session or project during my day, and my my phrase that I put in there is ask God. So I really want to think with God and be guided by Holy Spirit, Jesus, whoever's going to be there to guide me on this journey that I'm on. And so what I've been experiencing is I've been a clearing. I've been creating a space for people to come to me, and so that I could be truly helpful without thinking about it, because the Holy Spirit's coming through me. And so these miracles that I've been having are like amazing. And that's after watching the video, I was like, oh, interesting. I'm glad she did the science on vulnerability, and broke it down. And so thank you for sharing that video. And so Saturday, so what happened to me is I want to create an internet business, because I know I can help a lot of people that way globally. And I just couldn't get started. So I took a part-time job. What was happening to me is I was becoming very tired during the day and taking a nap and trying to work from home, but really not being productive. And I'm a people person. I need to be with people, but I didn't want to be behind a desk. So I went on Craigslist and I found a job with Amazon that's physical. Like, I bring stuff to the drivers so they can deliver the packages. And I'm part of this team, and there's people from all walks of life, all different cultures. And Saturday, there was this young man in his early 20s, very tall, gorgeous black kid, and gorgeous. I mean, everything about him on the form and physically was beautiful. He's a beautiful to look at. And we ended up partnering with, I'm sorry, I could hear someone cleaning dishes or something. So can you guys hear that, or is it just me?
Go ahead.
So I ended up partnering with him on a task after we clean up the warehouse after the drivers go, and we're done with our major task. And I just said, it was so nice to meet you. What's your name again? And we exchanged, I can't remember, but so we exchanged names again. And then he says, yeah, I felt a good connection with you. And so we bumped hands, like a high five, and said, we'll hope we see each other again, whatever. And then the next day, this woman that I'd seen, because people are on flex time and you never know when you're going to see them again. And I have a regular schedule Friday through Monday. And so I saw this woman that I saw like a week ago or something, and I smiled and I said, hello, what's your name again? And she told me, and her name I remember, Maria. And then she said, this is only my third day that being here. Could you train me today? And I'm like, I'm only on my 11th day. Why don't you ask a supervisor if it would be okay if I could train you? And she said she would. And she walked over to this guy, Brandon, and he said yes. So we started training together, and it was just like, so we were in sync, and it was amazing. But so then today, this woman in the break room, and that I saw the other day, who was busy tasking, and I didn't know what department she was in, but she seemed really nice, and I smiled at her. And days later, so that was Friday, and then today we were in the break room, and we're talking across the break room from each other. She was talking to me, and I was responding, and she got up after a couple paragraphs of sharing dialogue. She got up and trotted over and sat with me and just started pouring out her whole life story. And I'm just like, wow, and I didn't have any advice or anything, didn't interject anything, just was being present and listening to her. And she wanted my number to continue maybe developing a friendship or something. And so whatever, is just really incredible to be just present with people and let go ego and let God.
Yeah.
And to me, that's being vulnerable. That's shedding the shell. So I appreciate this group, because without it, I might have done that on my own. I mean, I was asking, had my alarm telling me to ask God, but I wasn't really present with what am I going to do with that, or I don't know. This is there's structure for me around this group. Thank you so much for everyone being here.
Yeah, I think the key thing I took out from what you said was just the power of listening, just being present and observant and listening.
Not wanting to get anything, just give and be present. And she did say something that I did give her a thought, and she was pleased with that, an idea for something that she wants to do. And I just told her what I would do if she was going to do that. And she just was grinning ear to ear, and she was happy. But I didn't need anything from anyone except for just to offer love. Thank you. I'm complete.
Any other quick comments? I gotta move on to facilitation. So I revisited the slide that we've shared a couple times before on what it means to facilitate. And again, it's, to make easy, to render less difficult, to help bring about. And the red text in the slide just shows really just some simple modification I did when I considered facilitation from the perspective of enabling deep vulnerability. And so rather than just saying we're making healing easy, we're making transformational healing easy. And, a key point is to provide a safe space. That's critically important. And then what I concluded with at the bottom of the slide is that, it previously said we are healed as we let him teach us to heal healers. So I think of the people in our groups as fellow healers, and our job is to help them, heal themselves. Well, we are transformed as we facilitate transformation. And to me, that's what vulnerability is about. When you go really deep, we enable transformation. Susan, you might want to mute. I think you've got some background noise here. Susan, there you go. So what I want to do here is I'm just going to literally, we're not going to read these quotes that are spelled out in the bullets, but we will spend time in chapter 25 of the first book in the Course of Love, if you want to turn to that. But while you're doing that, while you're grabbing your course book, I just want to, it seemed like there's like 4 areas where Course in Miracles, Course of Love quotes point to why we are vulnerable and what happens in the process of being vulnerable and letting others be vulnerable in our presence. So the first one comes out of the Course in Miracles. Your task is not to seek for, and I put in yourself, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that obscure it. So, we're not to seek for love, but we're to seek for the barriers. We're not to seek for God, but we're to seek for the barriers. And so I think facilitating vulnerability is about allowing people to seek and find the barriers they have within themselves to themselves. Sharing is necessary. You cannot come to know on your own from the Course of Love. Return with me to heaven. Walk together with your brother to loveliness and joy of being your true self. Of the Course of Miracles, we can't do this alone. You are here to make one another known, and in so doing, to know oneness. Listen to the voice of oneness in each other. Heal and make whole. Be informed. It's out of day 15 in the dialogues, which is all about engaging in dialogue. And a key thing that is important to me is that I think with acceptance comes transcendence. With embracement comes transformation. So when we can accept our barriers, we can accept the obstacles, we can rise above them, we can transcend them. When we couple acceptance with love, then we're now embracing our character defects, as is talked about in 12-step, our obstacles, the impediments. And when we embrace those things, those obstacles, they become transformed, as the Course in Miracles talks about. What used to be a curse and an affliction without a cure has been transformed into a universal blessing. I think that's what happens in the process of being vulnerable. So everything joined with you or accepted in relationship becomes holy. It is transcended or risen above and transformed or changed because of what you are. And then finally, I think critically important, and Laurie was talking about this, about listening is an act of love. I really think it's true. It doesn't really say that in the Course in Miracles or Course of Love, but it's something I feel strongly about. Deep and holistic listening. Listen and you will hear. Reside in the present moment and hear. This is a time of great intimacy. So as we facilitate this process of deep vulnerability, we need to realize that, you know, these are sacred and intimate times. And I think we need to have that awe and reverence for that time. So let me stop here and see if there are any more comments, and then we'll dive into the paragraphs in chapter 25. I'm complete.
Joe, I would like to share one passage from Engagement with the Mind. That's chapter 31, and that speaks to just what you said there. This is 31:20. Who you are is love, and as all things brought to love are seen in a new light. So as all things are brought to love, they are seen in a new light, a light that keeps what you would learn to help you remember who you are. And in that remembrance transforms the rest, leaving you with nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to keep hidden, leaving you with nothing but the truth of who you are. Thus, what you give through sharing, you gain in truth. No other type of gain is possible.
Thank you. Any other comments or quotes or references?
Joe?
Yeah.
That's Jeff. Yeah, I think in asking people to share from their own personal experience, you know, I've been in my head most of my life and can talk at length about lots of different things from what I've read. But I think what the Course of Love is inviting us to do is, at least for me, is to start sharing from personal experience. And for me, it's being a lot more vulnerable. You know, when I share from my own personal experience and inviting others to do the same, you know, I think we are demonstrating vulnerability and inviting others in the group to do the same. I'm complete.
Yeah, we show them that it's safe.
Yeah.
Lori, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just one little quick thing. Thank you for sharing that, Jeff. I spent most of my life seeking and searching to fix myself. I knew there was something missing, and all that was missing was me committing my life to God. And lo and behold, so that's what I'm practicing now. But in all that time, I gained so much knowledge. And I have the answer to everything that anyone can say even before they finish their sentence. And I still do that with my mom. And frequently I'm hearing her say, let me finish. And I don't want to let her finish. Like, I already know what she's going to say. And I'm like, so I actually made, what I've been doing is having this intention. The reason why I'm doing the Amazon is so I will go to the gym and want to keep exercising. My intention is to become baby boomer Wonder Woman. And if I'm baby boomer Wonder Woman, then I could be that for my mom and just be present and listen to anything she wants to say. She's the type of person that would call me, or I would call her, and 5 minutes later, she's like, okay, I'm done. She's going to hang up. I'm like, wait. I called you. Let me tell you what I wanted to call you about. And I might still not be able to tell her. So there was this little contention going on, and I wanted to be the one to be heard, but I don't need to be heard anymore. After what you, especially after what you just said, Jeff, it's like, I don't need to be heard anymore. I need, and my intention is to be present with my mom and let her talk as long as she wants until she's done and says she wants to complete our time together. And I did that with her today. I did that. So every day I want to have those miracles. So today that was my miracle. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Tomorrow will be another miracle, whatever I'm led to. So thank you for letting me share. I'm complete.
Thank you. I saw another physical hand up. Who was that? Judy.
Judy.
I kind of wanted to go back to that issue that several of you have talked about creating a safe environment. And I think that's crucial. And yet, my experience with vulnerability, whether it's one-on-one with another person or within a group, and it's what you were touching on, Cole, with the feeling of, I don't know where that will take me. You know, I don't know where that overwhelming fear of, I don't know where that will take me. And so what I've found in just my experience is, it's like, and actually my partner uses the example of, he talks about like a pirate on the walking the plank, you know, back in the pirate stories, being at the end of the plank and not knowing what will happen when he takes the next step. And it's kind of like that, that to some degree, we can create a safe environment. But for me, I found that the real safety comes in taking the leap through trust, through desire, through throwing caution to the wind, I guess. Yeah. And the safety then comes when everything is just fine, that nobody dies, that there is no death. You know, that to some degree, a large degree, all of the fear is of the things I don't know. And if I wait till I know them before I take the leap, I'll never take the leap. I don't know if that makes any sense, but there's a balance there between creating safety and just doing it. Being vulnerable in spite of the feelings that I don't know where this will take me. Trust me.
I see your hand, Cole. What is real, I just can't help, you know, in the Manual for Teachers, Development of Trust, it talks about, in a sense, our relationship with trust itself.
Yes.
It's not talking about another person. It's saying trust is an idea. How are you relating to trust? And what I've discovered in the corporate world is, you know, I've been working on relationships between companies, and people say, well, we've got some issues here that we need to deal with in this alliance, but we don't have enough trust in order to deal with the stuff that needs to be dealt with. And I say, no, that's backwards. When you deal with the stuff in a relationship, whether it's interpersonal or interorganizational or in a group setting, then you create a situation that calls for trust, and trust will come in. And so the first time I've had this thought occur to me, that the act of being vulnerable is a collective call for trust to come into our group. I'm complete. Cole.
Yes, I mean, for us, I think as facilitators is to create a container. You know, if I am totally comfortable with anything, I've created a container, maybe, you know, asking people for them to find out what it is to be safe. I think the most important part for me is that next step is trusting the course, trusting the words of Jesus to take that next leap where when we read something and it gently touches us, because it's always such a gentle thing, it's just suddenly this like, oh, this dropping in comes in. And that often gets covered by, oh God, I've got to finish this paragraph. And rather than not finishing the paragraph because the holy instant has already occurred, that which we're looking for, because we're not looking to learn this book. We learn to come back to who we are. That's the main purpose of it. It's not like how well we're studying. It's about finding who we are, and every sentence in the course is designed to point to that which we already are. It's nothing to learn, it's already to come to that. And I think it's the most important thing I find is that even as a facilitator, if somebody is reading something and I feel them drop in, I say, hey, can we just pause right there? Did something just happen then? Did you get touched on a very deep level? Oh, what's up? Sorry, my son just walked in. And to drop into that place and stay there, like make that holy instant extend, make it visible, like Mari says it. Make the feelings visible that I'm in that place, and then it's so shareable because the whole group picks it up. But sometimes this thing I was like, okay, I'm reading and I better get to the end, or let's better finish this chapter, stops us from that place of vulnerability, because it is new. It has to be new. And that could be feeling like, oh my God, I don't know what this is going to look like. Am I going to completely fall apart? And is that okay?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think I'm complete.
Can I
like that idea, Cole. I like that idea of just kind of honoring the vulnerability and having some quiet and stillness, and say, hey, let's just, are we seeing what's going on here? Are we feeling what's going on here? Let's just have some respect for it. I'm complete.
It's kind of sounds like, we're kind of dancing around fear of being harmed, hurt. And I say it like that because, okay, to be vulnerable, I mean, it's not a question of will I be hurt. The question is when I will be hurt. Riding a bicycle, you're learning how. I will fall. I will skin my knee. I might even break my arm. And then, picking up your child and saying, yeah, everything, don't worry, everything will be okay. My 3-year-old niece fell in the backyard. She's crying. My brother goes over, helps her up. He goes, let's see. She says, let's see your arm. Move it. He says, it still works. She says, but it hurts. He says, yeah, of course it hurts, but you're going to be okay. 3 minutes later, the tears are gone, and she's running chaos through the yard again. I mean, it was a thing of beauty. And I almost want to say, that's what I really don't see how harm or hurt could be avoided, because it's just kind of what this incarnation is about. Being human or being this creature, whatever. And I'm saying it like this because, but creating a safe space where if hurt does happen, they know they're okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
Sure. Complete.
So why don't we shift into the 25th chapter in the course, in the first book, and I'll put up the reference again. It is chapter 25, paragraphs 11 to 14, and this is on page 163 if you're in hard copy. So Lemoyne, you want to lead us through this, however you want to do it?
Well, I'm, I don't know. Is there anyone who would like to read this? See any takers? I'll go if not.
Susan just raised her hand.
I'll read it. 25.11. While one special relationship continues, all special relationships continue because they're given validity. The holy relationship of unity depends on the release of the beliefs that foster special relationships. To believe you are in concert with the universe is to believe that you have no need for struggle, to believe that you have no lack, to believe in your state of grace. While you believe even one person is against you, you are not in concert with God. While you believe fate works against you, you are not in concert with the universe. These attitudes confirm a continuing belief in your separated and vulnerable state. During the time of tenderness, you will learn through the practice of devotion to identify and reject all such attitudes and to adopt an attitude of invulnerability. An attitude of invulnerability is necessary now. It is not arrogance or a means by which to flirt with risk and danger. It is simply your reality. During the time of tenderness, you may feel vulnerable, but the time of tenderness is a time of healing. And as you are healed, you will realize you are no longer vulnerable to being wounded. Fear of being wounded physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually has kept you from engaging with life. Being healed and recognizing your own state of being healed is a key purpose of the time of tenderness. You cannot realize your true identity while you hang on to wounds of any kind. All wounds are evidence of your belief that you can be attacked and hurt. You have not necessarily seen disappointment as attack or hopelessness as hurt, but you do feel these emotions as wounds. While you think you can remain disappointed or disillusioned, you will not be invulnerable. There is always behind every disappointment or disillusionment or disillusion, every attack and every hurt, a person you believe acted toward you without love. While you believe feelings of lack of love come from anywhere but within, you will not be invulnerable. More? Am I still reading?
One more, I think.
Okay. A realization of your invulnerability is not necessary in terms of use, but in terms of service. Those who claim invulnerability and use it as a test of fate or an excuse to challenge the mighty forces of humanity or nature will eventually lose the game they play. True invulnerability can only be claimed by those who recognize it as a part of their true identity. Invulnerability will then serve you and your brothers and sisters. Its service is one of conquering fear and allowing love to reign. That's beautiful. Should I continue?
I think that's it. Lemoyne, did you have thoughts or comments on this section? It really rang for you, I think.
Well, one thing, yeah, I mean, you could go ahead and do 2515. It's short and it gets to the point, which is
okay.
Joining.
All right. Involvement flows from participation and engagement. Yeah, you're right. While it may conjure up notions of joining movements or parties or making social contributions. Pure joining is its objective. The first joining comes from within, and it is putting into practice the lessons of joining mind and heart in wholeheartedness. This first joining is a choice made from love without regard for the personal self. Am I done? I can't figure out.
Yeah, I think that was
Okay.
the
Without regard for the personal self. And that's what we're asked to step back from and step away from, is the personal self and over concern with it. And when you do that, you learn to trust. And I think trust is something that we haven't really talked about much in conjunction with being vulnerable. To develop that sense of trust and lack of concern with the personal self is key. Something else takes over beside the personal self. That thing, that core within, in that one graphic that you showed, in that the core of that circle.
Yeah, what occurs to me is that, as it says here, the inward journey to self. And when somebody's being vulnerable, they're taking an inward journey into their true self. And they're allowing us to be present and observe that sacred journey. I'm complete.
I think it also comes to that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
It comes to that, like Susan, when you're just reading and then you went like, oh, that's beautiful. You fell into this abyss of the beauty, right? And then to take that moment, because giving and receiving is as one. If you don't give it, if you just hold it for yourself, which is also fine, but the more you give it, the more you have it. But while you give it, we sharing it together. We go in union into that same place of sharing the love for God, or sharing love for beauty, or that sense of, like, just to realize that language is only a tiny part of who we are. It's actually just a tiny little offshoot, and we made it so important. And yet there is so much more going on in our being that often cover over, just like those turtles, they have this shell and they're just sticking their head out, they go, meh, 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 meh. But it's just going to that place where it's like, oh my, I think I shared it before, like my latest readings of A Course of Love, we hardly get through 2 paragraphs, because every sentence, it's like, oh my God. And then the silence comes that speaks, what is the word? Multitude.
Volume.
No, that speaks volume. That's it. Like silence that speaks the volume. And for me, that's the vulnerability. There's the subtle realm of the invisible being made visible, as
Yes,
it is given away, because it's got to be also given.
Yeah, and then that something else
And that's
comes
truly
in, that
shared.
third something.
Yeah.
That third something flows in.
Yeah, we wake up with that third something that's between us and amongst us. We allow it to wake up.
That's it.
Yes.
Laurie.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Sue and Cole, and everyone that's talking about trust. it's so funny that all my life I just wanted people to accept me and trust me because I knew that I had a pure heart. You know, my intention was always for their better good. And there's a saying in sales that people want to buy, but they don't want to be sold. And and because I wasn't trusting or loving myself, like what was stated in the YouTube video, then it wasn't authentic for people to trust me. I mean, they trusted that I had a good heart, but everything else they just let go. And now I realize that love is what is trusted. And if I'm just being present with people, they feel received, they feel acknowledged, they feel the love. And that's what they're trusting is my true self, the love that God created me to be. And I need do nothing, like A Course in Miracles states, because I'm letting go and letting God. And so I just want to keep practicing that more and more. Thank you. I'm complete.
Thank you. Yeah, those are powerful paragraphs. Thank you, Lemoyne, for encouraging us to read them.
Well, Jill and Joan, thanks for involving me in the preparation, calling me out. I just really meant a month ago at that meeting to say that, well, that vulnerable thing should say something about invulnerability. And it actually led me to these paragraphs. And yeah, and preparing, it's kind of like I fell back into it. I think the word, and so it's been nauseating. I don't know. I should just let it. I should be able to just let it be a sign of how far I've come over the last few months and years. But yeah, the word that I wanted to say about the thing about the outer shell was release. Release your outer shell. But I get it. It'll appear differently to different people. Another one is undercut. When you start to, this is the way it began for me to break the shell, is to realize everything that I was judging the world about was to just accept and look at it, look at the idea, is that me projecting? And then what is it, and then what is it covering? And it's covering the vulnerability. For me, it's always been really extreme self-judgment around just some episodes of extreme shaming. Primarily, it's that, although in one case it did lead to very credible death threats from white supremacists, because I dared to stand on the steps of their church and say what seems to be true: black people are people too, right? That didn't work. That didn't work. It was just the kids who'd been bragging about their weekend activities, and I told them they couldn't lynch black people, and they attacked me. And I didn't realize later what kind of physical risk I was in. Now, did I actually get harmed? Not really. I mean, my friend jumped in. I was staying at his house, and I was out of town, and I didn't realize what Alabama was really like then, 50 years ago. And it's interesting, though, even now, I mean, more than judging what they do or did, I still would wrestle with the self-judgment about something about survivor guilt. As I've unfolded it, I've gotten that far. But, that judgment, I made a judgment at that point that it's not that the truth will set you free, it's that the truth can get you killed. And so, those defenses may not point outward. They may point inward, and it was definitely what I realized, that the healing, the main healing that occurred in this work, is that my mind stopped trying to poison my heart, and to keep it down, to keep us both safe. You keep them both safe, right? I was able to get my mind to recognize that these are just some incidents. That's not the way the world is. If it was out to get me, it would have gotten me a long time ago. And that what happens in the terms of the world of form is not really what matters. It's yeah, it's not the matter that matters. which leads to the point the other people have said about what Cole said about language as being, it's limited. It's the illusion. It's like forgiveness. It's an illusion that can lead us out of the illusion.
Yeah.
And yeah, so although this isn't a real that was a fairly specific share. I think the way I can be restored is to what struck me about those things is the lack of the ability to receive love, and I didn't even see it. And I think what it is when I go into those defenses, I try so hard to cut myself off from the world that I don't see that I'm still sitting on it. It's still feeding me air, that nothing is wrong here. I'm not under attack, even though the feelings have gone way south, gone back to those moments where I was held up as an object of ridicule to the whole group on my first days out in the world. So, I don't know if that was really helpful.
Here.
This topic, I do get the point that for me, the vulnerability was the attack thought. I was always feeling vulnerable, and it's the attack thought of fearing, no matter what it was, getting the fact that implies a judgment on other people, and I don't want to do that, and I can forgive it, got me to the real core, which is the judgment against myself, which prevents the joining of mind and heart in wholeheartedness.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I really took away the idea that, which is new for me, which is these defenses are oriented towards within and also without. I mean, maybe that's obvious for other people, but I'm protecting my core, and I don't have anything to do with the world. So it's just the bi-directional aspect of the defenses was key for me to hear there. I'm complete. Karen.
Thank you. I've been sitting here listening to everyone and having lots of different feelings come up. For me, if I become defensive, I'm preparing for an attack, and I will get it. And I've learned that. So self-defense prepares me for an attack is my quote. And, the only way to invulnerability in my experience is through vulnerability. And I remember what it felt like to transform my idea of vulnerability from powerless to powerful. I'm in my power. I'm in my truth when I'm being vulnerable, and only when I'm being vulnerable. Yeah. And it is through that experience of expressing my truth, which feels vulnerable, that I come to know myself, and I'm sharing what's genuine with others. And that, I think, is the main goal of facilitating any group that's studying truth, especially A Course of Love, where we're marrying the heart and the mind. And that's what vulnerability is. Telling a story that's personal, that's private, that has emotion, and being able to release the story as a result of having shared it is where the healing comes.
Yeah.
And this is what I see my role as in my previous life as a counselor and in A Course of Love, is demonstrating that, yes, by doing it myself, by showing my own humanness and connecting it with my divine nature as a result of being able to touch what some are afraid to touch, that apparent imperfection. And if we as facilitators don't create a safe place by demonstrating this and by being very attentive and honoring when other people are doing the same, then I think we're missing the whole opportunity that A Course of Love has generated for us, using the material to share in that way. It's imperative. And it was obvious in our last conversation that this was more important than the other topics we had planned, because without being able to be real, to be vulnerable, what are we really talking about anyway?
Yeah, these are not discussion groups, these are sharing groups.
And my group is really starting to bond as a result of the sharing. You know, they're starting to see each other and learn about each other and what each one is working on. And it's really beautiful. I'm complete.
Well, I am a taskmaster, and I know that in spiritual matters, we're not supposed to have a list of do's and don'ts. But I wanted us to work on a list of do's and don'ts, and I've got it started here. And so I wanted to share it as a slide, because I think this could be a good reference material for us and for others who view these videos. So I'm just going to read through them real quickly. And these are things that just occurred to us as we prepared for this time together. So facilitating deep, vulnerable sharing. How do we do that? First of all, what do we do? And we've talked about this a lot. We provide a safe space, and be thinking about other things that I might have missed on this list. So we provide a safe space for the person sharing and for the group. We want the collective to feel safe. We be observant. We allow for quiet and stillness. We be fully present. And I really like what Cole said. You know, when somebody has deeply shared, let's respect that with some quiet time. We practice deep holistic listening with the body, mind, heart, and spirit. So as facilitators, I think as we listen deeply, we change the person who's sharing and we change the group. We ask for inner guidance. When something comes up, you know, inner guidance might say, well, maybe you should ask a question, or maybe you might share a little bit about your own vulnerability. But I think we should let the inner guidance give us that guidance. Empathetically connect, and I differentiate this from sympathy, but we see the situation from their perspective and we reflect their emotions. And I added during this last conversation, you know, we need to be vulnerable ourselves. We need to be willing to be vulnerable ourselves. So that's a list of some suggested do's, and then some suggested don'ts is don't interrupt them. Again, unless you're prompted by the inner guidance. So maybe somebody's going in a direction that's having negative impact on the group. And as a facilitator, we do need to say, you know, we need to do something. We don't know what that is, but the inner guidance can direct us. Obviously, we don't judge anything about what's being shared as either good or bad. This is the key one for me, as a hot button. But I don't think we give any advice. These are not therapy groups. These are not self-help groups. We should not give advice, whether solicited or unsolicited, during the gathering. I think afterwards, we might say, hey, can I give you some unsolicited advice? But when people are sharing from a place of vulnerability, I don't think they're doing it for advice. They're doing it just to do it, just to share, just to get it out. And then differentiating empathy from sympathize, you know, we don't join them in their sorrowful situation. So we may connect with it, but we don't need to join them in that. So I want to see if anybody has anything they would add or change or comment upon this list. Karen.
I would just add, have tissues available, but refrain from somebody starts crying to get them a tissue. I mean, oftentimes people in the group are uncomfortable when someone else is emoting if they haven't done a lot of it themselves. And so refraining from interfering in any way, let them get their own tissue. And certainly don't reach out and touch them when they're sharing. That breaks the energy, and it gives them the message of confusion, like, oh, am I sharing too much, or is this too deep, or are you judging me? They're in my experience of being vulnerable is I'm in a different state in my mind. I'm in my heart, and any kind of interference while I'm sharing from that stream is an interruption and an interference. So have the Kleenex available, but don't take care of people. I encourage crying. I tell them, laugh, cry, it's all encouraged here. So
yeah, and they don't need to be rescued. You don't need to rescue anybody. It's the only thing I would add.
Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add acknowledge them. There's something in the RSA video, the RSA talk she gave. It may be in the TED talk too. Is something about. If she says it in a way that I don't know that I can, but it's like, I'm so glad that you shared that with me, is the way she says it. Another way is to acknowledge, that it took something for them to let down those defenses and share what's really going on. You can certainly,
sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can certainly acknowledge it as that is what I think it's in the appendix where it says share from feelings and experience, and that is they're actually doing what we're here to do. Yeah.
I mean, I think that I know I can, and I think others can get nervous when people are being vulnerable, and we may not want to stay in that place with them. And so a lot of times, I can think of several times where somebody has really shared deeply, and the next person who shares goes off on some other tangent. It's like, hold it, no, whoa, let's come back to this. Something sacred is going on here. Something holy is going on here. Let's stay with this. I'm complete. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, you raised a really important point, Joe. In the, I think it's day 15 of the dialogues where it's entering the dialogue, it talks about, okay, our goal is to be boundary-less with one another. I think that's kind of equivalent to not worrying about being vulnerable. But then it says something I think is really important, and that is, but respect the boundaries of others. Some can't be as vulnerable or boundary-less as perhaps we are being, or perhaps as we would like. And if we keep pushing on the other person, they'll perceive it as an attack. Well, in a sense, it is an attack. So sure, share as you will, be as open as you will, but be sensitive towards those who have boundaries and honor them. Complete.
I can't see others' hands, so if anybody else has comments, just.
This is Steve. I think on the what do we do list, we dedicate all thought to union. And that goes back to the second sentence in 2511, which we just read. In the holy relationship of unity, depends on the release of the beliefs that foster special relationships. And throughout the book, we're always reminded to dedicate all thought to union. In that place, we're invulnerable.
Yeah.
Complete.
Hi, I appreciate everything that everyone said, especially Karen. Just to remind about, okay, Karen, is your meeting your course of love group?
You're breaking up, Lori. We can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Better now. Can you hear me now?
Hear you better, yeah.
Oh, Karen, is your group, course of love group, is it in person?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, so yeah, because I've been in groups before and we had that same protocol. You know, just be present with someone, and truly, if they need Kleenex, they'll ask for it. If not, get up and get it themselves if it's there for them. But with everything else, everyone says I'm turning it back to me. If I feel like one of the things that I have to remember is if I'm feeling like I'm being judged by a facilitator and being cut off by a facilitator, even if I'm sharing my own personal experience, and I feel, the only reason why I share experiences is because I feel I'm drawn to the topic. I'm drawn to how the topic is reaching me. That might not sound like the right answer to a facilitator, and I've been told that, which is, I've taken offense to that. But if I am here to be truly helpful and I'm here to be vulnerable, and that means even if I'm a participant, to just let it go, and see where I, go within and listen to what's next. Because really, whatever I have to say isn't important if someone else is telling me it's not important. That's not important to them. Okay, so why should I be attached to that? What it is that I want to share, that they're cutting me off, something like that. But anyway, I'm complete. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to wrap up this slide. I always like to wrap things up and see if there are any other major comments on things to do or not to do if we want to facilitate deep, vulnerable sharing.
Yeah, Joe, it's Jeff. We spent a lot of time talking about trust, and it's not in there. One place I think would be helpful would say, at least for me, ask and trust your inner guidance for direction.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm complete.
Thank you. Well, this slide is always included when we send out slides afterwards, and we review it at the end. And so we encourage you to give comments between our sessions or during the session. And we've already gotten a strong vote from Steve that he wants us to dive into what is our experience with working the 40 days. And you've got 30 seconds, Steve. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yes. I was wondering if the other members of this group could share any experiences they may have had in terms of working with the 40 days differently than we typically do in group. At my experiences in the ACIM and the ACOL groups is, a topic is selected or we're reading through the book, and, some groups prefer to read a couple of paragraphs and discuss those. Others will read the whole chapter and then discuss the chapter. But when it comes to the 40 days, when I've done those and I've done them on my own, they are an extremely rich experience. And I would just hope to be able to share that richness with the other members of the group, and how might that best be accomplished. And I don't know if everybody has just kind of employed the standard operating procedure, and when you get to day one, everybody reads day one and discusses it. Some people will read it in advance of the meeting and discuss it, but I'm in a couple of different groups. One has gotten into the days, a couple of others are approaching the 40 days. And, I'm thinking, is there another way? People read the days in advance. You pick one or two per week in journal, and then speak to their journals instead of going back and trying to learn the days and what they're trying to teach you in the days, getting out of the pattern of learning and coming to know our true identity. And so is the group open to that and sharing some ideas along those lines?
Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I haven't done that with my group, and I don't know, to me it feels like a personal revelatory thing. I don't know that all groups are doing 40 days, or when they get to them, they do them together. I took that as a personal part of the work. But I don't have any experience in a group with those, either being in the group or facilitating the group.
Well, let me suggest, I mean, we are at the end of time, and I'm interrupting a little bit, but let me suggest that be our focus in 2 weeks, is how have we dealt with, that doesn't sound like the right word, how have we worked with the 40 days? Because I think they are a unique portion of the course. And so let's dive into that real deeply next in 2 weeks.
What is your experience of the 40 days? I love that.
Right. So we're going to do a closing meditation, and Joan's going to close us out.
I'm going to read the prayer at the end of "There is no death, the Son of God is free." Our Father, bless our eyes today. We are your messengers, and we would look upon your glorious reflection of your love, which shines in everything. We live and move in you alone. We are not separate from your eternal life. There is no death, for death is not your will. And we abide where you have placed us, in the life we share with you and with all living things, to be like you and part of you forever. We accept your thoughts as ours, and our will is one with yours eternally. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for being here. This has been such a rich experience in sharing.
Thank you, Joan, and everybody.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Namaste.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, everyone. Love you all. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
See you in a
again.
couple of weeks.
And Joe,
Good to see you all.